All right, let's talk about it. Because the NFL Combine just turned into absolute chaos for the San Francisco 49ers. And if you blinked, you probably missed 3 different headlines already. This is that time of year when general managers speak in riddles, reporters start connecting dots, and one sentence can send the entire fan base into panic mode. And right now, the biggest name floating around Indianapolis is Trent Williams. You saw the report. You heard the noise. There's a contract. Impasse. There's talk of a possible release being floated. And when something like that hits, your first reaction is probably the same as mine. Wait, are we seriously talking about moving on from one of the most dominant left tackles in football? John Lynch addressed it, and in classic GM fashion, he said they've had good and productive meetings with Trent Williams' representatives and that they feel like they're on the right track. Now, if you've been following this team long enough, you know exactly what that means. It means something is happening. It means nothing is happening. It means negotiations are ongoing. It means leverage is being applied. It means we're not getting real answers right now. That's how this works during Combine Week. Everyone's smiling in front of microphones, but behind closed doors, it's all business. So, let me ask you straight up. Do you think Trent Williams plays another snap for the 49ers? Yes or no? I want you to answer that in your head right now, because this could be negotiation tactics, or it could be the early stages of a serious roster shift. Now here's what makes this even more interesting. While all that noise is happening, the 49ers quietly make a front office move that might actually matter more long-term than people realize. They're bringing back Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah into a personnel role. And if that name sounds familiar, it should. He was the Vikings general manager, and before that, he started here in San Francisco. This is not some random hire. This is a calculated addition to the brain trust. And Combine Week is where those relationships matter. Deals don't just happen over phone calls. They happen at steak dinners. They happen in hotel lobbies. They happen when decision-makers bump into each other in Indianapolis and start talking possibilities. The 49ers reinforcing their personnel department right now tells me something. They are preparing for movement. Whether that's a big trade, a cap maneuver, or a roster reset. And if you're new here, this is exactly why you want to be subscribed with notifications on. Because during Combine Week, things don't trickle in. They explode. And we're chasing 2,000 subscribers. So if you're part of the faithful, and you want daily breakdowns like this, without the national media spin, this is your spot. Now, here's where things take an even sharper turn. Because while we're all focused on Trent Williams and front office hires, there's another name that just entered serious speculation territory. And that's Brandon Aiyuk. And what John Lynch just hinted at might completely reshape this offense. We're getting into that next. Now let's talk about the name that just sent shockwaves through the Combine floor. Brandon Aiyuk. Because while everyone was still processing the Trent Williams situation, another update slipped out that might actually be even more telling about where this roster is headed. John Lynch was asked about Aiyuk's future, and his answer was, careful. He said, they won't really know anything definitive until the new league year begins. That's standard language. That's front office insulation. But then came the interesting part. There's chatter that the 49ers are planning to release him at the start of the new league year, unless someone shows interest before then. And Lynch even hinted, maybe someone this week will have some interest. Combine Week. That's not random wording. This is the week where GMs are in the same building. Agents are walking the same hallways. Conversations happen fast. And if there's going to be a trade partner, this is when the groundwork gets laid. Now let's break this down logically, because emotion can cloud this one fast. Aiyuk's contract structure reportedly makes him a pretty affordable gamble for another team. If you're sitting in a front office around the league, you're looking at a former All-Pro level receiver who, if healthy and motivated, could be a massive steal. We're not talking about a first-round pick return here. We might be talking about a conditional 6th, maybe a 7th, maybe even just a pick swap. Low risk, high reward. But here's the flip side, and you have to be honest about it. There's uncertainty, health questions, locker room questions, and when you're giving up even a late-round pick, you're betting on upside. So I want your honest take. If it clears cap space and resets the wide receiver room, would you trade Brandon Aiyuk for a 6th or 7th round pick? Yes or no? No middle ground. Drop your answer in your head right now, because this is the kind of move that separates emotional decisions from business decisions. And let's zoom out for a second. If Aiyuk is gone, that signals something bigger. It signals a financial reshuffling. It signals prioritizing flexibility. It signals that the 49ers might be bracing for future extensions or preparing to reallocate resources somewhere else. Maybe the offensive line, maybe defensive depth, maybe something we haven't even seen coming yet. This feels less like a random rumor and more like groundwork being set. And faithful, real quick, if you're still here, locked in, breaking this down with me, you're exactly why this channel exists. We're building something here. We're chasing 2,000 subscribers, and every single one of you matters. If you want to fuel this quest for the next Super Bowl trophy, not just on the field, but right here in this community, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to push this thing forward, use Super Thanks or the Hype feature. That's not a donation. That's you investing in better production, faster updates, and stronger coverage for the faithful. We're building this together. Now, back to the roster reality. Because if Aiyuk's situation is unstable, and if Trent Williams is in negotiations, there's another domino sitting right behind them. And that's Jauan Jennings. And the way Lynch talked about him might tell us more than he intended. Let's get into that. Now let's talk about Jauan Jennings, because this one feels different. It doesn't have the explosive headline energy of a Trent Williams impasse or a Brandon Aiyuk trade rumor, but if you read between the lines, it might be just as telling about where this roster is headed. John Lynch acknowledged that there have been contract talks with Jennings. That's important. That means there was at least some level of effort to keep him in the building. But in the same breath, Lynch mentioned Jacob Cowing. And when front offices start pairing a veteran's name with a younger, cheaper option, that's usually not accidental. That's leverage. That's planning. That's the business side creeping in. Jennings has been one of those players the faithful love. Physical, clutch. Fearless over the middle. A tone setter in big moments. But here's the hard truth. If his market pushes toward $20 million per year, and that number isn't crazy in today's receiver market, the 49ers have to ask themselves whether that fits their financial blueprint. He's 29. He's earned the right to chase the biggest deal possible. And honestly, if he lands that kind of payday somewhere else, you tip your cap. That's what this league is about. Careers are short. Windows close fast. You get your money when you can. But from the 49ers' perspective, you have to weigh production against cap allocation. If you're potentially restructuring one star, possibly moving another, and trying to stabilize the offensive line, something has to give. So, let me ask you this straight up. Would you pay Jauan Jennings $20 million per year to keep him in red and gold? Yes or no? No emotional answer. Just business. because that's how the front office has to look at it. And here's where it gets interesting. If Aiyuk is moved, if Jennings walks, that's not just subtraction. That's a philosophical shift. That's leaning into youth. That's trusting development. That's betting on scheme over star power. It might not feel comfortable, but it might be necessary. And Combine Week is where those seeds get planted. Agents talk numbers, teams gauge interest, players test markets. And sometimes the writing is on the wall before free agency even officially opens. Now, don't lose sight of this. Sometimes when it feels like the sky is falling, it's actually just recalibration. The 49ers are not tearing it down. They're trying to extend the window. And sometimes that means letting good players walk so great. Players can stay. But roster turnover isn't the only storyline coming out of this news cycle. Because there are some key updates on injuries and special teams that quietly matter more than you might think. And if you're looking for signs of optimism heading toward training camp, there are a couple of them. Let's close this out with what it all means. Now let's bring this full circle, because while the headlines are dominated by contracts and trade speculation, there are some quieter updates that actually give you a clearer picture of where this team stands heading toward training camp. First, stability. The 49ers lock up veteran long snapper Jon Weeks. It's not flashy. It's not going to trend nationally. But special teams continuity matters. You don't think about it until it's a problem. And when it becomes a problem, it can cost you games. So securing that piece is about eliminating variables. Championship teams minimize chaos wherever they can. Then there's the kicker situation. Eddie Pinheiro is expected to test the open market, even though there's strong interest in bringing him back. That tells you two things. One, the 49ers value him. Two, he's confident enough in his performance to see what's out there. And honestly, that's fair. If you've proven you can produce, you owe it to yourself to gauge your worth. The question is whether San Francisco matches that number or pivots to a cheaper alternative. Now let's talk injuries, because this part actually brings some optimism. Nick Bosa is expected to be ready for training camp after the ACL tear. That's massive. You never want to rush a franchise pass rusher back, but hearing that timeline gives you confidence that the defensive identity stays intact. When Bosa is healthy, this defense operates differently. It pressures quarterbacks differently. It dictates games differently. And then there's Keion White, who went through a frightening situation after being shot in the ankle following the Super Bowl. He's had surgery. He can't put weight on it yet. But the expectation is that he'll be back by training camp as well. That's resilience. That's depth potentially returning right when you need it. So zoom out with me for a second. Combine Week always feels chaotic. Rumors fly. Agents posture. GMs dodge questions. But if you strip away the noise, here's what it really looks like. The 49ers are recalibrating. They're reinforcing the front office with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. They're negotiating hard with Trent Williams. They're exploring options with Brandon Aiyuk. They're preparing for the possibility of life after Jauan Jennings. They're protecting key injury timelines. That's not dysfunction. That's strategic pressure. And here's the real question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the direction of this team right now? Think about it. Because uncertainty doesn't mean collapse. Sometimes it means transition before another run. If you've been riding with this channel through every rumor, every contract standoff, every roller coaster moment, you're part of the faithful. And we're building something here. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers. And every single subscription pushes this community forward. If you want daily, no-nonsense breakdowns and real-time reactions when news drops, Make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on, because this isn't slowing down anytime soon.